This is the eCommerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the pod. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Jason NYHUS from Shopware. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Wonderful to be here.
We were just talking about off air that I think we've got several hundred connections in common on LinkedIn, and we run in a lot of the same circles. So it's a fantastic opportunity for us to finally have a chat and me to be able to put a face with the name.
I tell you, we've both been in e-commerce for 24 years. I think it's been harder on me and my hairline than it has on you, but it's wonderful to spend some time with you on your pod.
Thanks very much. It is very exciting. Look, you haven't been with Shopware that long. You have been with them as president and GM for just under 2 years, but this is your first rodeo. You were with Digital River. You've been in this game for a long time, but you also have a retail background as well. And it feels like you've got just enough knowledge and experience across a broad spectrum of both technology and retail to really be seriously dangerous.
I certainly appreciate that. I started in e-commerce in the year 2000 at the time of the .coms or .bomb, whatever, and really saw a lot of different kind of waves in the history of e-commerce. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you today, because I've played a role for probably the last decade or so with analyst relations and really being close to that and how these analysts work and how they make decisions on their rankings and things. And your post caught fire on the internet around the Forrester B2B wave. And I was really intrigued by the fact that you stepped out and said a few words that were a little bit controversial, but also got a lot of positive response. So anyway, long-winded way of saying, I think I have a decent amount of e-commerce knowledge, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, no, that post was, I wouldn't say it was a throwaway post, but it certainly, the intent wasn't to be incendiary. It was really just to call a spade, which is what I try to always do with my content. And that post, as of now, has nearly 200,000 views. So it's definitely, I think, potentially my most viral post ever in 8 years of posting, 8 years plus of posting on LinkedIn. So it definitely struck a chord. I think it's got nearly 1,000 reactions and 500 or 600 comments. So you're right. It definitely struck a chord with a few people. And look, like I said, I certainly wasn't trying to be incendiary, but I guess when you have looked at analyst reports for many years, as both of us have done, what I've really had to reconcile with myself is that oftentimes these analyst reports are written by people they live their life as analysts versus being practitioners. And so they don't necessarily have a firsthand experience with implementing any of the software that they're reviewing or doing analysis on. And so it does beg the question, if you're not a practitioner and you're not someone that's working in the industry on the daily, how can you possibly provide unbiased analysis? And really what I was trying to call out there was not that Shopify is a bad platform. It's not. I think Shopify is a great platform. Yeah. It's absolutely got its place in our ecosystem. But more to the point, this is Shopify's very first time ever in that particular analyst's report, and to emerge as a leader from day dot in an area where they admit themselves they're really new to the B2B game, and they've really only been working on B2B functionality for a year and a half. For them to enter as a leader just seemed ridiculous to me. And so I felt, geez, somebody's got to call this out. It might as well be me.
Yeah. And there's been a few people also doing the same. Now that your post caught fire, a lot of other people are trying to step into that as well and get some of that. But let me, if you don't mind, may I make a few comments on my view as to what we saw?
Please do.
Yeah. So I do know Joe Sickman pretty well, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. He is an unbelievable person, and he actually used to be a practitioner. I believe he was AT&T, if I'm not mistaken, and he worked at places like IBM, and then before that, Sterling. And so he's got a really strong technical aptitude, and he lived in a couple of seats. So he does bring a little bit of a practitioner's view to it. Shopware, there were 14 commerce providers on the B2B commerce wave, 14. And this was Shopware's first time being included. And so first of all, I just want to say we're honored to be included. Now, that said, I don't remember getting a grade that bad since college. We even studied for this test. But no, in all seriousness, when we dug in deep and we said, we placed here, we're glad to be on. Why did we score the way we did? Let's have a dialogue around it. And Joe was incredibly gracious with his time. And he shared a couple of things that really I didn't expect. The first is he believes that the e-commerce, B2B e-commerce, the way it's going to be purchased is going to go through a major transformation. He thinks the hyperscalers, the Amazon, AWS, the GCP, the Azure, commerce is going to be a service inside of those hyperscaler solutions. And so what Joe, I believe, my interpretation, just mine, is that he was giving extra credit for people who were already in that motion of how you deliver B2B commerce from inside of AWS or GCP. So you could use your cloud credits, you could get discounts on other things, that kind of thing. And so that was certainly one of the aspects he probably weighted more than anybody anticipated going in. Have you had time to think about that kind of point? And then I have a few others I'll make.
Yeah, look, it's interesting because, look, I don't know whether he's referring to platforms that run on hyperscaler infrastructure, which everybody does, whether it's
everybody
or Amazon. So the reality is that Amazon has bought and sold probably more e-commerce platforms than just about anybody else, and they still don't do direct to consumer or B2B e-commerce. They don't sell a platform, a technology. They've either bought and resold or bought and shut down multiple e-commerce technologies over the years. So I don't see them going down that path of offering an independent e-commerce platform that maybe has a native integration to Amazon out of the box and maybe basically almost like an omni-channel business in a box. I don't see Amazon doing that anytime soon. They've tried, they failed. I don't see the Google doing it. Google's tried to do commerce for many years, and their commerce forays have almost all fallen flat except for Google Shopping. They are trying to put some extra fuel on the fire of Google Shopping, and that's met with obviously some success, and almost everybody sends a shopping feed to Google Shopping now. So look, whether Microsoft has any ambitions in that area remains to be seen. Obviously, they do have a commerce platform. I never run across it, just to be completely transparent. I never run across their commerce platforms anywhere in any of my client engagements. And in fact, I never have. In 24 years of doing this, I have never run across Microsoft in any of my engagements, either as a competitor or as a serious contender in any of the clients that I work with on their shortlist. So I'm not sure whether Microsoft has serious commerce ambitions, but if they do, they're going to really struggle just because they are not taken seriously as a commerce player. So I'm not sure whether, at least for speaking for those three, whether that's a viable future for them, as opposed to being providing the picks and shovels. It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out.
It's a slightly different angle though. So today, if you were to go to AWS Marketplace and you say, I want to get all these different services, you could get payment provider services, you could get commerce, you could get PIM, you could get it all, and you could assemble it yourself and really use AWS as the infrastructure, and let's say Commerce Tools as the commerce service or composable service that you use. That's really the way that Joe was thinking about hyperscalers and embedding the services inside of those scales. And he gave extra credit for that. And we weren't expecting that. We utilized, as an example, our software is you can run Shopware in your own data center. You can run it in any of the hyperscalers. We can run it for you in a single tenant SaaS environment, or you can use the Shopware cloud. And so we thought we had the answer nailed because we offer the most variety as to how people can use their software in the cloud. And he was looking for one step further, that they can actually buy the commerce software from the AWS, GCP, other places. That was one thing as why you see companies like Salesforce or Commerce Tools do pretty well in that, is really because of that weighting.
That's interesting too, considering the fact that I can't go and get Shopify. I can't pay my Shopify subscription through AWS. I can't go and acquire it through them. I can't go and pay my Shopify subscription through as part of my GCP subscription or my Azure subscription. I'm not quite sure how that ended up the way that it did. Look, at the end of the day, analysts have their own methodology. They have their own ways and means. They have their own reasons. They have their own justifications. Some will argue that it's a pay to play. The analysts always argue against that vehemently. I think when we say pay to play, it's probably more the barrier to entry of even being considered, and the cost involved to be able to submit, the cost involved to be able to participate is pretty high, as I understand it. I've never worked platform side, so I can't say whether that's the case or not, but I do know for a fact that a lot of the smaller players, they simply can't afford to be under formal consideration. They can't afford to make the submission. They can't afford to make themselves available for the amount of time required to go through these analyst processes. And for that matter, I did have several major platform vendors reach out to me privately. I won't name them, but reach out to me privately and say, look, because of the way that we have been treated in previous instances of dealing with analysts, and where we didn't feel, even when we did pay to be under formal consideration, we don't feel like we got a fair hearing with those analysts. And as a result of that, we have completely withdrawn from engaging with analysts at all. And it's not a money thing. It's not because we can't afford to be considered. It's because we didn't feel we got a fair hearing with those analysts. And as a result of that, we felt like it's perhaps skewed customer perception of what our platform can do. And therefore, we choose simply not to get involved with analysts at all. And so I definitely heard that from more than one vendor who is significant enough with deep enough pockets to definitely be formally included, and they chose not to be.
Yeah, I completely hear you. And Shopware, my company, is a $65-ish million company, growing 30, 40%. We're doing really well. And the amount of time and attention, let alone money it takes to participate, is not insignificant. It's meaningful. And it's a little bit like all these tech companies really embracing all these new regulations. It's this concept called regulatory capture. Like,
totally,
the harder we make it for everybody else, the more alone we'll be at the top, and everyone else will have to play by this, and it will be a moat that prevents others from participation. Is that kind of in line with what you're thinking, this regulatory capture concept?
100%. And it also, when I looked at some of the events that were coming up by this particular company, and I looked at the list of sponsors for these events, certainly if it doesn't have a direct impact on an analyst's opinion, it certainly appears to have at least an indirect impact, because certainly the people that seem to have the biggest sponsorship engagements with some of these big events seem to also consistently get ranked very favorably by these same analysts. So it's a very interesting, I hesitate to use the word incestuous, because I think that's maybe a step too far, but it certainly seems like there could be conflicts of interest involved at certain points in the industry. And frankly, I even had other analysts reach out to me and privately via DM and say, this is not on. This is very clearly a situation that we wouldn't allow happen in our analyst reports. They said, look, your take is actually spot on. We would never have ranked them this way for these reasons. So it gave some validity, I think, to some of the concerns that I raised, and frankly, that many other hundreds of people in that list also raised, some of them being vendors that felt slighted. So there we have it. But let's not linger on that for too long. It is what it is. It's always going to be, analysts are always, to some degree, analysts in many cases would rather people be talking negatively about their reports than getting no coverage at all. At the end of the day, they have a job to do. They have to make some incendiary calls to even get eyeballs on their reports and to get attention for what they're doing in the market. So I guess if that was the goal, Forrester absolutely achieved it in this particular case. So look, maybe there was a method to their madness all along. But specifically in relation to you guys, look, you raised, as I understand it, you raised $100 million back in 2022 from PayPal and some existing investors. You're growing very fast. You guys are, to be honest, I hadn't really, despite me being in the industry for a huge amount of time, full transparency, have never worked with your platform, have never been exposed to your platform, never even had a demo of your platform. But really, it feels since that particular round of funding, because as I understand it, you've also been around since 2000. So it's not like this is your first rodeo, and it's certainly not your first chunk of funding, although up till that point, you'd been bootstrapped.
It was.
And it just feels since that round of funding, clearly a significant chunk of that has gone into sales and marketing, because it feels like literally from that point forward, I started hearing a ton of noise from your camp. And that's got to be a good thing, right? at the end of the day, if you're not flying your own flag, nobody's going to fly it for you.
That's right. Let me comment on a couple of things. So thank you for that. So Shopware has been around 24 years, as long as you and I have both been doing e-commerce. And what's crazy about it is I was at Digital River, responsible for all sales and partnerships and a few other things. And I saw that this little company, Shopware, had raised $100 million. And I said, who the heck is Shopware? And why does the world need another commerce platform? And then I realized, oh my God, this thing's been around a long time and they got a ridiculous list of customers. What am I missing? What hole am I living in? I got a call from a recruiter, as luck would have it, shortly thereafter. And I posed the two founders the same question. Who the heck is Shopware and why does the world need another commerce platform? And they went on to tell me, and I think they're right, that most commerce platforms have outsourced innovation to their ecosystem. Okay. And I thought about it. And again, having been in the industry for 20 years, I can't name many net new features that were made available by a commerce platform. Almost everything that's happened is externalizing an API that was internal. It was making the service more enterprise class with higher levels of SLAs and security. It was becoming headless, which is actually taking away capabilities and allowing you to work with a third party. It was refactoring the core of the product so it could work in a world of mobile commerce and social commerce and marketplaces. And so all the innovation in our industry had really dried up. And so when Shopware raised $100 million, the goal was to do two things. Number one, plant a flag in the US. In North America, there's never been a leader in any Gartner or Forrester wave or quadrant that doesn't have a meaningful business in the United States, and we would be no exception. And the second is bring back feature innovations that actually do two things. Allow our mid-market clients to compete with their Goliath competitors. And what does that mean? It means new features and functions that you can't get anywhere else. The second part is to reduce the cost of commerce as merchant. And almost every other commerce platform has a model now where as your revenue grows, theirs grows at the same level. And all of the platform economic or the unit economics or the economies of scale don't go back to the merchant. And so we had an opportunity to do something different. And you're probably hearing about it because we're LinkedIn and the 50 odd agencies in the United States that we now work with and the multiple hundreds in Europe are all helping tell this story. And that's part of how we're having so much success is through those agencies.
And Shopware originates from Germany, right? It was originally founded and scaled out of Germany, and it originated as a pure on-prem platform, as I understand it. Again, look, you can validate my understanding of things here. When I heard of Shopware, I had heard of it purely because I know it's the stronghold is Germany. And so consultants, Wouter Dieters and a few others from Germany and a few others from Europe, the consultants that I'm affiliated with, they work with Shopware. And the reality is that's the only way that I'd really heard. I had never been directly exposed to the platform. I'd only been exposed to the platform through consultants and agencies in Europe that I knew about and had friends working at. And so it feels like they really have, for many years, had a big stronghold in Europe. And if for no other reason, then they allowed European e-commerce brands to be able to be GDPR compliant, where obviously if you were with any of the US-based SaaS platforms, it was difficult, if not impossible, to become GDPR compliant. And so therefore, Shopware had a little bit of a free run at this in Europe for a long time because they were one of the first platforms that could allow those European merchants to be GDPR compliant, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you pointed out the German origin. It's something we're incredibly proud of. And it's really for a variety of reasons. The first is, having been in this a long time, what you realize is that Germans love and are really focused and good at e-commerce. And if you take a look at past quadrants and waves, companies like Hybris, which is acquired by SAP, German, InnerShop. You think even about Salesforce's Demandware product. What was Demandware built on? InnerShop. You've got Spryker, who's in Germany now, Scale Commerce in Germany. You got Shopware. You even have a company called Cleverbridge, which is focused on digital goods, or MyCommerce, also digital. And even the CEO of Shopify, Toby Lütke, German. And so just the enormous amount of German influence in global e-commerce should not be understated. What's also interesting about it is in that market that people know and love and appreciate great e-commerce, more companies buy Shopware than any other company on the planet. It's the number one commerce platform in all of Germany. So it was that realization by the Carlyle Group and PayPal when they said there's an opportunity here to go big. And that's what we're doing.
And is it Shopware's vision to move up the enterprise stack, or have they always been enterprise focused, or is it
mid-market?
Really Shopware's vision to stay mid-market?
Mid-market all day long. So listen, this may be a little controversial, but when Adobe acquired Magento, they got an enormous ecosystem of unbelievable agencies and experts and all of these capabilities. And Adobe is world-class at selling to the biggest enterprises in the world. And if you're a really big enterprise with a huge team and a big budget, you should probably buy from them. What happened then is it left a whole bunch of businesses who used to build their entire business on the backs of the Magento commerce platform. They were abandoned. And every year, the bar of how much GMV a merchant has to do gets higher. I think I heard the last time it was 50 million. Maybe it's higher than that now before they'll even give you a demo. Okay. Shopware is PHP and Symfony. Shopware is also open source. Shopware is able to go into all these agencies all over the world and say, I know you've got these devs. I know they're not that busy. I know you got past customers. We've got something we think can help you. And it's been incredibly fulfilling for me to go in and help these people rebuild their businesses back up. It's why we've taken 2,500 companies off Magento and migrated them to Shopware.
Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you, and now back to your listening. And how do you think of Shopware in the context of other open source carts out there, the PrestaShops of the world, some of the other open carts that are out there? It seems to be that the world, at least through my lens, is largely moving, not 100%, but significant portions of the market are moving to true SaaS platforms that are multi-tenant native SaaS platforms. For all of the benefits that brings to the table in terms of scalability, moving things from CapEx to OpEx, moving things into a native PCI compliant environment, taking away all the pain, because I come from a strong Magento background myself. I was working in the e-commerce space in 2008 when Magento really started to take the world by storm. And really, at that time, at least in the US, they were one of the only major options that merchants could get an enterprise class product at an achievable price that the mid-market could actually afford and have their own data in-house, have access to the back end and the front end. Now, as you rightly point out, since their Adobe acquisition, I think Adobe now doesn't even sell the Magento product as a monolithic product. They push it with AEM as the front end because they know that Magento is such a dog from a performance perspective that unless you deploy it headless, it's going to be a real challenge for you as a business to get good performance out of the platform. I worked for a Magento Gold partner for many years, so I love what Magento did for the industry. It really moved the industry forward. But now almost everybody seems to be moving towards that multi-tenant SaaS focus. And so you guys feel like you fit somewhere in the middle. You have open source roots. You've got an on-prem product, but you also have a cloud product that isn't multi-tenant SaaS, but it's a PaaS product, really. Let's call it what it is. It's a PaaS product. So how do you see yourselves in that, world?
Yeah, we actually have both. We have Shopware Cloud, which has a single tenant offering and a multi-tenant offering. And it's one of the fastest growing aspects of our business. But the difference in our approach is it really matters. Because instead of just saying, we have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, now we can go in and say to a merchant, hey, listen, if your requirements don't fit inside this box, whether it's our box or Shopify's box or somebody else's box, you're not a great candidate for our solution that is multi-tenant. You're probably a better fit for a single tenant or a self-managed. And there's a whole bunch of distributors or B2B companies who don't have enormous margins. And to pay anybody a rev share for someone who's making 3.5 points of spread on a consumer electronic distributor, they're not paying anything out of OpEx. They want everything out of CapEx. And so the fact that we can deliver a world-class commerce platform with more features and benefits than anybody else in a CapEx-friendly way with a license fee, and you can manage all of the infrastructure expense, is a huge selling benefit to some merchants. Not all, but some. And so it really comes down to making sure that you get the solution you need, not the only one I'm selling. And that's a fundamental difference. Does this make sense, Jason?
Absolutely. Makes complete sense. And when, since the origin of the business, were they always focused on more the B2C, D2C side, and then laterally started to realize, hey, we need to add some B2B functionality because this is a very rapidly growing market, especially during COVID? When did they get B2B religion, and where would you place yourself on this scale of, say, 0 to 100 of being an advanced, dedicated B2B e-commerce platform, maybe like an Oro or some of the other B2B focused platforms out there, versus a Shopify at the other end, which has really only started to come to the B2B game 18 months ago? If you were to put yourself on that scale, where do you see yourself in the range of B2B capability?
I love the question. And toward not all the way at the top. I think there are companies who have better native B2B capabilities than we do, but here's what's really powerful about it. We're not trying to acquire our way to have great B2B. Okay. We're trying to make sure that we're building a really world-class B2B utility that serves kind of unique ICP of the mid-market. I'll tell you what I mean. I think of B2B split out into kind of two camps. You have the consumerization of B2B, and then you have real hardcore sales reps are involved B2B, okay? And I think the consumerization of B2B has been what e-commerce platforms have been talking about for the past 20 years, about next year is the year of B2B, because we're going to try and make these B2C experiences look more like B2B. And we're going to allow purchase orders, so therefore we can do B2B. So to me, the easy 10% is the automated rebuys, taking renewals online if it's a digital business. Oh, did I lose you? It's around some of those really simple, give consumers or give businesses the ability to go and self-help and buy the product, that kind of thing. Real hard B2B is when it's the 90%. It is where the sales reps have been stuck with a bunch of new tools, like a CRM and other things that they've not adopted. When you really try to unlock the real potential of B2B, you've got to address the needs of those sales reps. So the 10%, which is easy on the consumerization, which everybody can do, and the hard 90 requires a different set of tools that don't exist in the market today. No other commerce platform has some of these things. And so we have things like a rule and a flow builder, which do in some way exist inside of a Shopify or something like that. Really powerful tools that create workflows, which are relevant to B2B. But what we have is this thing called a digital sales room. And it takes the power of e-commerce, of B2B commerce, of presentations, of video, and ties it all into a unified experience. And it will do to e-commerce what telehealth has done to health. Today, for a B2B seller, they might have 50 accounts of which they spend all their time driving around meeting the 10. And it's the 40 other accounts that don't help them hit their number, but they're in their territory that are underserved. The digital sales room product that Shopware has allows them to more efficiently serve the 40. And it's through unlocking tools like this that reps want it because it helps them make more money. So you ask where we're at in the continuum of B2B. If the goal is to unlock the hard 90, we're near the top. If the goal is to be world-class at the 10% consumerization, we're somewhere in the middle.
And when you think of the future of Shopware, when you think of the roadmap for the next 12, 18, 24, 36 months, and you start to think about, okay, cool, we can deploy more B2C, D2C capability, we can deploy more B2B capability, we can deploy headless capability, we can deploy, there's all these things we could be working on. When you think of the focus for the next 12, 18, 36 months, what are your customers asking for that you don't yet do? Or what are some gaps in the market that you don't yet do that you'd like to plug between now and the next, say, 18 months?
Yeah, I love the question. And I'm going to bring it all the way back to Emily Pfeiffer's research on the B2C Forrester wave, because I think it's really an interesting moment. What she told us through her wave process is that nobody is a leader in commerce for B2C. Now, Shopware is not included in that one because we, at the time of the process, didn't have a big enough meaningful business in the US. We're getting there. We will soon. We have it, and hopefully by next year we'll be included. Fingers crossed. But what she really was telling us through the fact that there's no leaders was that I actually talked to her. I wrote down the word. It's a mountain of sameness. Almost every e-commerce platform, and from a B2C perspective, can do the same thing. It's roughly the overlap between who can do what. If this was an RFP, everyone would get the same score. And so that is a big moment that you can say, you either believe this is commoditized and you differentiate and compete on other ways, price, how you access the service, your distribution through agencies, or you say everybody else has lost their creativity and we can go innovate and deliver new features and capabilities that nobody else has. And so we're doing the latter. Our goal is to bring, let me actually tell a little story and I'll give you some examples. So Shopware is on a version called Shopware 6. And as you rightfully said, our origin is in on-premise software. That's how this whole thing started. At the end of 2017 or 18, the brothers at Shopware realized that we were spending 65 to 70% of our development resources refactoring the commerce platform for today's context. Okay, like I said before, mobile commerce, social commerce, marketplaces, APIs, native webhooks, the ability to have microservices or composability, all of these things on a 6 or 7 year old or 8 or 9 year old commerce platform made us spend way too much of our energy refactoring the product, not building new features, just trying to keep up with the market trends. Okay. And why this is such an important point is because Shopware did what was hard. We built a brand new product with 0 lines of code ported from the old product called Shopware 6. Shopware 6 was launched in December of 2019. That means that it is a 4-year-old commerce product. 4 years old. And it's built to natively support all of today's context. And everybody we compete against are running 15, 12, 10-year-old commerce platforms that they continually have to refactor and keep the lights on and do other things. It doesn't matter how it's hosted. The only reason it matters where it's hosted is because they can hide how painful it is to do all these changes to retrofit it to today's context. So for Shopware to be successful, Jason, we have a window in time that we should be able to out-release new features and functions to our merchants that nobody else can. We have these capabilities called Rule and Flow Builder. We're going to continue to expand those. These are things that are basically if-then statements that create the algorithm that merchants can run their commerce on, the rules engine. In addition, we've got AI natively built into our product. We have 15 different unique capabilities that are all automated through AI, where you become a reviewer and an approver as opposed to a creator. We're going to lean deeply into personalization. We're going to lean deeply into great experiences in a product we call Sales Agent, which is really a B2B utility. So to answer your question more bluntly, we think there's a feature war that should be fought. And we, at this moment in time, believe we're one of very few vendors going to go fight it.
Sounds amazing to me. What, as of today, if you were to look now, I know that maybe at the time of that $100 million round, you were very heavily skewed towards European merchants. What does your split look like today, roughly? I don't expect exact numbers, but if you were to say Europe versus US, or say North America as a whole, what would that split look like today? I'm guessing it used to be like 90-10 or something like that, and it probably isn't that way anymore.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So what does that look like today? Is it a more equal split between European and North American merchants, or is that really still, you consider the US market as still a beachhead market that you guys still are trying to really crack?
The honest answer is, if Europe was standing still, we would be probably 8 to 10% of the overall pie by now, but they're not. They continue to grow and really benefit from the tailwinds in our business. And so for us to really change the shape of the pizza, we have to grow faster than our European colleagues, which is going to be hard and a challenge we're up for, by the way. Right now, as we sit in Q2, my US team has booked more new logos and more new bookings than the European team. Now they know that, and they got a couple of big ones they're going to try and close so they can pass me. But it's a heck of a fun game to try and compete internally, and the fun you can have with the gamification of sales reps is all fun and games. But we're making meaningful progress. Just this month, we had high watermarks in terms of new logos we've won, new sites that have gone live, total bookings of revenue, ACV and TCV, number of deals in the pipeline, and the overall size of the pipelines, and the number of partners we're working with. So across almost all cylinders, we're really starting to fire. I don't think we get to 85-15 by the end of the year, but that would be an amazing outcome if we could.
Hey, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time, as my mother used to say. We got to have lofty goals if we're gonna get there, right? And how do you guys
Amen.
how do you guys make your money? You've got these three versions of the platform. You've effectively got on-prem, you've got single tenant, you've got PaaS effectively, and then you've got multi-tenant SaaS versions of the platform. And I'm guessing that they are all priced differently. You're buying a license for the on-prem version, you're paying a subscription for the multi-tenant SaaS version, and then however the heck you do it for the single tenant SaaS version, the single tenant PaaS version rather. So I'm guessing you've got different pricing models for different deployment models. And I guess as part and parcel of that question, do you guys actually do deployments of your own software, or are you a partner-only deployment model? So everything gets deployed via partners that do the implementations, do the customizations, do the system integrations, and you're really just the product company, yeah?
We are a lean, mean product company, and we do 0 implementations. Now, I would say 100% of our implementations are done by partners, but the truth is a small percentage of those, maybe 8 to 10%, are merchants who've got technical capabilities who want to do it themselves. But for the most part, it's done with and through agencies. So you asked how we make money. The primary way we make money is we sell enterprise plans, which come with enterprise capabilities. They come with security. They come with SLAs. They come with support. They come with all the thing an enterprise would need to buy. And we also have the community edition, and the community edition is free, and it's free forever. So if you've got a small project and you want to use the free product, we're not going to sell against it. We want you to do it. We believe that the best technology ideas should be open sourced, and we're no exception to that rule. One of the things that also differentiates us is we allow complete openness of what technologies you want to work with. So we're not forcing you to use our payment infrastructure because we may get a penny or two every transaction. You can bring your own. We're not going to tax you if you do. So that's a unique differentiator that some other providers don't do.
Makes sense. And so if a brand wants to find out more, if they want to work with you, if they want to talk to you about the platform, are they best to go? I'll drop your website links into the show notes. I'll drop your personal LinkedIn links into the show notes. But if people want to learn more, what's the best way to learn more? Are they best to seek out a Shopware agency partner or find one through your website? Also, talk a little bit about your app model or your marketplace model for tech partners that may want to integrate with or build with. We hear so much about the vaunted Shopify marketplace and the fact that they're now up to 12,000 apps they've got an ecosystem. There's no question about that. And everybody else, I think, is trying to play a little bit of catch up to that scale and size of ecosystem. Some would argue that the reason why they got 12,000 apps is because they should have more core features and functionality in the core platform. So you don't need 12,000 apps, but there's arguments to be made on both sides, of course. But for you guys, how do you think about the app ecosystem, the co-developer ecosystem out there in the marketplace, the partner ecosystem from a delivery perspective and an implementation and an SI perspective? And then how do you think about that in terms of new brands that maybe want to learn more, and what's the best path that they can follow to learn more?
Yeah. So first and foremost, we have an app store. It is incredibly robust. I don't know if the number is not 12,000 as big as Shopify. It's less. I want to say 3,000 to 5,000 apps. It's a very robust app store. It's not the biggest, but it's not the smallest by any means. And because we are an open source commerce platform in our soul, the ability to play well with others is critical to it's basically built to be composable from day one. And so one of the differentiators of Shopware is we have native search. We have a front end. We have a commerce PIM. We have lightweight order management. We have subscriptions. And if you want to use ours, great. If you want to turn ours off and make up some other system in our app store, the system of record in a composable way, do it. So we like to call it a practical composable strategy. You can go all the way down to just for the core commerce engine and use apps for everything else. If you're interested as a technology provider, we love technology providers. It's how we're able to help merchants go faster. All of them act in a way a bit like an accelerator. So we love those because it reduces the cost of and speed of launching. If you're a merchant, come directly to us and we'll have you talk to one of our agency partners. I view the role of agencies as never more important than it is right now. The power of the marketing stories behind some of these companies we compete with is so great that you need someone at an agency to be a truth speaker about your requirements, your timeline, your budget, and your control. And so we like to pick agencies who have multiple horses, of which we're one. Because we think that gives us our best chance at landing customers that are going to like us when they go live and far beyond get a renewal. So that's one of the powers of working for a German company is you play the long game, not the short one, which is the American way.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Jason, visit shopware.com.
Absolutely.
Visit me on LinkedIn. Send me a note.
But thanks, Jace. Really appreciate that. An hour has absolutely flown by. It's been a fantastic chat. Really appreciate your time and sharing all about Shopware with me. Now we're at the end of our time together, and this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to my guest. I get to let them ask me one question. Any question they like, can be personal or professional. So Jason NYHUS from Shopware, what is your question for me today?
Who should have been the leader in the Forrester B2B wave?
Very good question. Look, I'm not gonna be drawn on that. What I will say is that it is very situation dependent, but I'll tell you who I think probably got slighted the most. I think Oro got slighted the most. I think Oro as a B2B, a primarily B2B platform. They've always been a primarily B2B platform since their inception. Obviously, Yoav from his Magento days then pivoted and decided to do Oro and was a CRM to start off with, focused heavily on the B2B world. I think those guys are doing some great work. Are they perfect? No platform is, but I tell you, it's maybe situationally perfect. And I think those guys got an absolute raw deal being weighted so down the trough there in the wave. I think they probably got slighted the hardest. A lot of platforms did, I feel, get a bit of a raw deal there, especially if they're B2B first or B2B only. I feel like it was a little bit unfair to not take into account the amount of time that they've been focusing on B2B and building for those specific, really challenging B2B use cases. I think that is probably why I feel that ranking Shopify where they were was the bigger slight, because these guys have been doing it for so long. Anecdotally, I've heard that Shopify's put roughly $650 million into their B2B side of the platform over the last 18 months. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it's a heck of a lot of money that they put into that. Obviously, some of it would have gone into products, some of it would have gone into sales and marketing. I get that. So I'm not trying to say that Shopify is not trying to be better at B2B and that they haven't introduced some B2B primitives that are really important to the foundation of the platform. But I think that some of those other platforms that got ranked way down the list, they got slighted pretty badly. And I think that's really unfair given the amount of effort that I know the people in those platforms are putting into building a B2B first or a B2B only platform. So I will say that's my takeaway. Jason, it's been fantastic speaking with you. I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon, my friend. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.